3, 2, 1, and seems we're live. Okay, thank you everybody for joining the live stream. Just getting started here and also setting up the channel and inviting some people. So bear with me. This just came all very recent, very new, and I just want to make a quick live stream before the market opens today about NIO, because there has been 2 SEC filings today, and which of one I find one of them very interesting, and I want to quickly discuss them. Let me first invite some people to the channel. By the way, I'm not able to, unfortunately, I'm not able to see most of the comments from LinkedIn because this is not supported here on my software yet. But I think I can see the comments coming from YouTube, so that's awesome. Just give me a second here before we start. Hope you all can hear me and see the video. Now 5 people are watching. That's great. So right now we're still pre-market and the shares are trading. Let's see, minus 4% pre-market. Okay. Markets are going to open in 2 minutes. All right, just let me quickly share it one more time so we have some more people in this live stream before we start with the content, right? All right, okay, let's start. So yeah, first of all, thanks once again for tuning in here. This morning I was already on my way to the office, but I got 2 emails. One in the morning from NIO regarding the new sales numbers of the NIO vehicles. And later on, just before I was about to take off and go to the city, another one, which was very interesting SEC filing about the NIO shareholder ownership. And okay, the market has just opened, so NIO is still down 4%. I'm sharing one of my screens here, so you can see it. NIO has just started trading and it's minus 4%, and let's see what's happening in the first couple of minutes. Yeah, anyway, so in this live stream, I just want to talk quickly regarding those 2 SEC filings. And first of all, please bear with me. This was so ad hoc and spontaneous that maybe, the sound is not working or something like that. Yeah, it's all very ad hoc, so I hope you can still enjoy this kind of live stream. And then also, Till, I don't know if you're watching this. I was actually supposed to meet you. I'm very sorry I didn't make it to our meeting, but this news I thought is very important. And also one notice from my side here is that all of what I'm saying here is not investment advice. You should do your own due diligence. I'm only talking about my personal opinion here and yeah, what I see it's happening in the market, which I find quite interesting, but I'm not saying you should either sell or buy NIO shares here, okay? And also as a disclosure here, I'm holding both Tencent and NIO shares, so I'm a long-term stock owner of those shares, so I'm not trying to influence any of those shares in any way. But yeah, anyways, that's it so far. And another thing is, yeah, maybe you have noticed that we're now starting also our YouTube channel. So for those of you who are watching on YouTube, please make sure to subscribe in order that you see recent updates such as this live stream. And if you're watching from LinkedIn, that would be awesome if you also hop over to YouTube. You just find it by searching for Dongxi, like our company name, and then you find our channel and you can subscribe to it. I would be really, really appreciated. And yeah, that's just about the recent development from our side. Okay, so let's jump into the news of this morning, which is actually quite funny because if you can see here on my screen this morning, I just made a LinkedIn post about Tencent, in which I happen to invest in 2012 for the first time. That's been quite a nice ride being invested in Tencent. And why? Because one thing I like about Tencent is not only that they are the developer of WeChat, which has obviously been very successful, and Tencent has become one of the major tech players in the world. Another thing is that Tencent has invested in lots of companies. So they're kind of, if you are invested in Tencent, you're kind of holding a couple of shares in those other investments that Tencent has made, and that thereby you're kind of invested in this, this whole innovation thingy going on in China. So you are partly owning, in some ways, maybe not legally, only directly, on some startups in China, which are actually quite significant. So if you read my news here, you can see that Tencent has invested in more than 800 companies, of which 70 are publicly listed, 122 are unicorns, and 15 of them delivered returns over 1 billion. So that's amazing. And then also, what's quite significant here, Tencent holds 5% in Tesla, and that was a very successful ride so far as well, of course. And when I made the post, they were holding 13.3% in NIO. So yeah, I made this post this morning, and that was just a pure coincidence. I didn't know what will happen later on. And then, as I mentioned before, I got my first email this morning regarding the new Tencent, the NIO deliveries this morning. And let's just have a quick look into that. So here we see the NIO investor page where all of the news are reported. Let me check somewhere. I have the file already open. Oh, this is the BitAuto opening. Just let me find it quickly. Investor relations, and then we go to, as I mentioned, it's all very spontaneous and I talk here. I'm sorry, I haven't prepared this presentation in advance, so this is all very on the go here. Right, so the first update this morning from NIO was that, and now we see NIO is already turning a little bit more positive, so it's almost not down anymore, only 0.7%. Yeah, this morning NIO reported the delivery numbers for the January 2020. And they said they delivered 1,598 vehicles, of which 1,493 were of the model which are selling the most recent one, the ES6, and 105 only from the ES8, which is the more expensive one, and a bigger flagship model. Anyway, so yeah, these were the numbers reported by NIO this morning, and they also gave, giving some arguments why those kind of numbers were like they are. So they say that the numbers are satisfactory somehow, but they were also impacted, obviously, by Chinese New Year and by the coronavirus, according to William Li Bin, who's the CEO of NIO. And yeah, they also gave an outlook. The CFO of NIO, Stephen Fung, gave an outlook. He said, for February, we expect a reduction in vehicle production and deliveries. So that's actually, in my point of view, could be expected, because obviously China's now going through the crisis with the coronavirus, and also they are still impacted by the Chinese New Year. But obviously this is some news which I think is quite bad for NIO, because obviously we want to see more growth in the company and more rising sales here. So when I saw this news this morning, I was not focusing too much on it, because I was actually expecting this kind of news, and I was actually also expecting that the sales numbers were not too impressive, and that I would rather see them as negative, actually, and especially the outlook for February. It's definitely not bullish if they say that they will go further down. So I don't think, well, I was expecting by this alone that yeah, the NIO shares would go down. But another thing, yeah, well, let's see this in contrast. So here I'm also running a little Excel sheet in which I'm always logging my NIO numbers. And so if we just look at the sales numbers here, I already added them quickly for January. So these are actual numbers here. What I'm outlining here in red, these are actual numbers which I just mentioned, which have been reported today. And I made some quick calculations about what could be the February and March numbers. And how did I do that? So actually, I was just looking back what was happening in the 2019 numbers, basically here for the ES8 in February. So that's Chinese New Year's. They were down to 811 sales, and now well, we have like the ES6, which is selling most. So I was kind of taking the ES8 numbers for February as the ES6 numbers, which is obviously not accurate, but it's just, you know, a quick calculation of how it could work out. And then I'm also expecting a dip in the ES8 numbers for February here, if you can see that. And in March, I'm expecting also not more than in January. So I don't think it will take up much further. So in total, we could get to around 3,800 sales in Q1. So this is just my estimation, a very quick calculation. This could be totally off. This is just a napkin calculation in order to make a quick estimation on how Q1 in 2020 could look like. So if we look on the revenue model here, if we look at the 2020 revenues Q1 based on the numbers that I just showed you, so I'm expecting around 3,800 models to be sold, and I'm calculating here with the same average sales price than we had in Q4. Actually, that's already quite an optimistic number, because I would say this average sales price would rather go down already, because I think NIO, in order to come up with more sales and get out of this funding situation and so on, they will reduce the average sales price even further in order to sell more cars. It's one of the arguments which I thought why I'm currently not so positive on NIO, because to me that doesn't show a lot of strength. But yeah, on these assumptions, 3,800 cars per quarter, and also this average sales price, we would land at roughly $235 million in revenue in Q1 2020. So that is, in my opinion, not a lot of revenue, given that NIO has shown a cash burn in the last quarters of around more than 200 million US dollars. So they successfully reduced it from more than 500 million US dollars in the past down to the new number, and I expect that they can even reduce it further. However, if we see this dip in the revenue from more than 400 million US dollars, actually these are my estimations. I don't think these are the accurate reported numbers. I need to look them up again. But definitely in Q1 2020, we will see less revenue than we saw in Q4 2019. So that is giving NIO a lot of pressure, right, on their funding situation. So NIO should now have probably less than 100 million US dollars in the bank. And that's why, if you look at my videos on YouTube and also what I'm writing on LinkedIn, I'm kind of getting a little bit more risk averse regarding NIO. I was invested more in the past in NIO, and now I'm just staying at the sidelines a little bit. But this may change with another SAQ filing that came in later, and that is actually the bigger news to me today. It's bigger news to me than the actual delivery numbers which we saw today. And so what you're seeing here is this other SAQ filing. So it's been filed this morning as well. And if you subscribe to the NIO email, you will, the shareholder communication email, you will get this email. And I will quickly run through it and talk with you about what I think this means or what it could mean, because I'm also just speculating here, and thereby, please, once again, this is just very ad hoc and very spontaneous here. I'm not saying that this is the case, and I'm also not saying that you should invest in NIO or not. Let's see it, NIO is now already 1% up, so not in the red anymore, which is good news for new shareholders. I'm glad to see that. Anyways, let's jump into the SAQ filing, which basically is reporting on if certain shareholders and stakeholders on NIO reach a certain threshold. And this time I found it quite interesting because if you run through it, you will see actually 3 names. One is Mount Putois Investment or Putois Investment Limited, so a Chinese entity which now reports 5% stake, as you can see it here, in NIO, if I read it correctly. Then you have the Image Frame Investment Hong Kong Limited, and we can also see Tencent Holdings Limited is reported to have a new stake, now 15.5% in NIO ownership. And if you go back to my post, which I made this morning, so that Tencent is holding 13.3% in NIO, this changed this morning, right? So now Tencent is reportedly holding up to 15.5% in ownership in NIO, and that means that Tencent is increasing their shares, and this report is actually dated by December 31st of 2019. So they're now just reporting it. So the actual threshold has maybe increased before that. And but now we see that those stakeholders have actually increased their shares. Now, what could it mean? If we go into the ownership calculation here, and this is all just my preliminary calculations here, so I'm not sure if this is all 100% correct here and true. However, it means that Tencent Holdings is now having a 15.5% stake in NIO, and Li Bin, who is the owner of and CEO of and one of the founders of NIO, he has a stake of 14.5% in the company. So before today, or at least from the filings before today, Tencent had less stake in the company than the CEO Li Bin had. But now this has changed. And what is also very interesting, which I just saw later on, is that the other companies who are reported here, Image Frame Investment, Hong Kong Limited, and Mount Putois Investment Limited, they are actually owned by Tencent. Now, I'm not 100% sure how to read it now, because in the SEQ filings, the Image Frame Investment Hong Kong Limited reported around 10% ownership, and Mount Putois around 5%. However, they are owned by Tencent, as I mentioned before. So I'm not sure if this actually adds up to a 30% ownership by Tencent, or if this is kind of reported that the increase of the Tencent Holdings ownership in NIO comes through those two companies kind of holding, well, no, not holdings, but company vehicles that Tencent owns, and thereby upping the Tencent position. Because if you look at the details here, let me just go into this again. You see that regarding Tencent filing here, which is 15.5% ownership, and 140 million voting power. In the small print, it says that this consists of the shares which are actually held by those other two limited companies, and actually some more companies who are also mentioned here. And you know, Tencent owns these kind of voting rights through those companies. So whether you spin it either way, it could either mean that Tencent, through those companies, through Tencent Holding, plus to these other two companies which are owned by Tencent, has a total stake of 30% in NIO, which I'm not 100% sure about that. Or Tencent has a 15.5% ownership in NIO right now, through making adding up their investments through those other companies. Anyways, in any case, in any scenario, it means that Tencent has now more ownership in the company by shares than the CEO and Li Bin. On the other hand, if you look at the voting power, in the small print, it says that Tencent, through these companies, has the total voting power of 140 million. And I looked it up quickly. It looks like Li Bin has the total voting power of 151 million, because you know, those voting rights can depend on what kind of shares you own. So there are Class A, B, and C shares, and so on. So the voting rights are connected to that. And that's too much detail. I haven't had the time yet to dig into the details here and see exactly what it means. However, that would mean that Li Bin, he still has more voting power, but just a tiny bit more than Tencent, actually. So what could it mean? So first of all, for the funding situation, as I outlined in my videos before, I think, well, NIO is, as I mentioned a couple of times, is in a very tight cash-strapped situation right now, and they definitely need to raise more funds. And they have done so with some smaller convertible loans and convertible bonds, which seem to be the only option currently, as the JC deal did not work out, and also other institutional investors seemingly did not invest in NIO, also not the government, for instance, Beijing E-Town. Those deals never manifested. So for the funding situation of NIO, I actually think this SEC filing could be positive news, because if we see that Tencent is upping up their shares and a stake in NIO, that makes it less likely for NIO to go bankrupt through to being cash strapped, because Tencent wouldn't allow this to happen. The question here is this a hostile takeover, or is this actually something that the NIO management wants? There have been some rumors recently that some of the new investors are demanding that Li Bin to step down as a CEO because they're not happy with how much money he burned, how much cash he was spending, for instance, in the NIO houses and so on. So in that way, I'm not sure what is Tencent's position here, if they are also unhappy with how Li Bin is managing the company, because actually there's another background with Li Bin and Tencent, which is that Li Bin, he was founding a company before called BitAuto, which he grew as a founder, and he managed to sell to Tencent. And in the past, Tencent was also, in October 2019, was one of the stakeholders to give NIO one of the convertible bonds, so 100 million US dollars, aside from Li Bin, who also did it. So I don't think that Tencent is trying to do a hostile takeover here. Doesn't look to me like that, but that's just my personal interpretation. So don't count on that. That's just from how I see the story unfolding. Anyways, yeah, I think this could be positive news here, whereas most people are possibly looking at what's happening with the sales numbers. I actually think that the second news is more important. So I'm now watching that NIO is already down 2% again. So yeah, it's a very volatile stock. Everything can happen with NIO, even within a day. But yeah, I think maybe most institutional investors, like the big banks and so on, they will just look at the sales numbers, like how they're unfolding. And as I mentioned before during this live stream, I think the sales numbers haven't been too bright. Also, the outlook is quite conservative and negative in a way. So I think most of the banks and Wall Street, they will look mostly at those kind of published sales numbers, and maybe not so much into the second filing about the share ownership in NIO. And yeah, once again, I'm not 100% sure how to interpret it here. So either NIO, Tencent has a 15.5% ownership now, and thereby exceeding the ownership by Li Bin, or they even, through those other companies who are holdings of Tencent or owned by Tencent, have even a larger stake. But anyways, we can see the voting power of the two has already become very big. And I guess like in total of all of the shares which are traded and of the float and so on, at least Li Bin and Tencent together should be very, very powerful shareholders now. So how do I interpret it now? Well, basically, if NIO is down today, I'm actually considering picking up a couple of more shares, to be honest, because, well, I'm maybe not going in big now, but I think if Tencent is, increasing their shares here and also maybe securing more voting power, may it be hostile or not hostile, I think that's actually good news. So regardless of the bad numbers on the sales side, because if I would only see those kind of, reported numbers on the sales side today, I would actually be, very bearish about NIO, because I think the numbers for Q1, they don't look good. Pointed out before many times, I think that it's the wrong strategy to try and raise one convertible after the other, and having just those minimal revenues to be expected, so around $240 million, that will certainly not be enough to cover all of the expenses, even though NIO manages to decrease their cost basis. So if I would have not seen the news on the Tencent ownership today, I would say that was very, very bad news for NIO. But now I think I'm kind of equal on what's happening today. And I think, as I mentioned before in my other videos that you can see on YouTube, I think NIO will show us a couple of more negative news in the next couple of weeks, because just what's going on with the coronavirus, with Chinese New Year, and with the weak quarter Q1, which is always weak for all of the OEMs. I think there's just not so much positive news to be expected, and at the same time, still having an unsecure funding situation here is actually really bad. So I think if we talk about the stock price, even though it was going up to more than $5 a share again, I think it could easily drop anytime. So as even like you saw today, starting at -5 in the morning, then going up to 1% plus, now trading 1% minus again. NIO is just so volatile. So please, if you are invested in NIO, or if you're considering investing in NIO, make sure that you can bear the losses, because it's such a volatile stock, and anything could happen with this stock. So it's really, really unsecure how everything will turn out. But anyways, I hope this was informative to you. As I mentioned before, all of this was kind of ad hoc and very spontaneous. So I hope you got most of it out of this live stream. I hope the video and audio quality was good. If you have any questions right now, I think for those kind of people who are watching on YouTube, I can see your questions. From those people watching on LinkedIn, unfortunately, I cannot watch your questions. So if you have any questions here, I'm going quickly through it. No, it doesn't look like there are any questions here, only some comments. Just taking a couple of seconds here for a quick Q&A in case anybody else had still some questions. There's a new comment. NIO will be $12 soon. Yeah, well, I share your positive outlook on NIO. I'm actually a big fan of the brand and company, and I rode the NIO cars in the past, so I could convince myself about the quality of the cars. And if you follow my Twitter or my YouTube or my LinkedIn, you will see that I'm a big fan of the electric mobility revolution that is unfolding. And besides Tesla, I think that NIO in China is doing a really good job here. So yeah, I'm actually bullish on NIO. However, I have to say I need to kind of balance my my personal investment here, and NIO just kind of got too risky for me here. Here's another question: what is personal outlook for the NIO funding? Well, I like to see all of NIO a lot. Yeah, actually, that's a good question, because I think, well, what is really interesting about NIO is that they have a very, very active and very positive and supportive customer base and also shareholder base. So there's lots of people who are kind of, believe in NIO. It's almost like a cult, and those people, they also really like the CEO Li Bin. So I once met a Chinese guy in Shanghai who took me in his ES8, and we drove around the city, and I asked him why he actually bought the car, and he said, well, actually he is kind of friends with the CEO Li Bin, so or at least in a close friends circle. And he said he bought a car because he believes this person, because he thinks he's not another guy who's kind of doing some fake stuff and so on. So I think Li Bin has a very strong standing, and he's very, very important for the company. I wouldn't go as far and say that he is like a second Elon Musk, even though he's getting reported like that sometimes in the news, but he's maybe not as charismatic as Elon Musk, and also maybe a little bit not as much outgoing as Elon is. But at the same time, the company is really, his baby, and that's also reflected in the ownership in NIO. And I think that's really something very positive, because it's actually a founders-driven business. So it's not owned or not run by a manager who's just working as an employee. So that's always very positive. We can see the impact with Tesla. Tesla is so strong because of Elon, because he's invested in a company. He was very close to going, maybe even personally broke in the past. And I think that's a very strong motivation both for the company management, but also the employees and ultimately also the shareholders. So I think Li Bin is very important to the company, and as I mentioned, my first interpretation would be Tencent is not trying to make a hostile takeover here. It looks more to me that Li Bin and Tencent, they could work maybe side by side in order to getting a bigger stake in the company together. And I think Tencent should be supportive of Li Bin as well, but that's just my personal interpretation here. Another comment here is, what do you think about the competitiveness of their new car, the EC6, compared to the Model Y? That's a very good question. So the EC6, that's actually a hilarious name, by the way, was presented by NIO Day. It's actually a very good looking car. If we quickly look it up here, let me take a second to Google it. It's definitely, going to be a Model Y competitor, and in my point of view, it's very good looking, as always, very solid. Very solid build quality from the looks, at least. The thing is that we don't know too much about it yet, which was actually also very clever by NIO, because they haven't unveiled the price tag for this car. They first want to take a look at what will be the pricing for the Tesla Model Y in China. And as we can see, NIO might be very much under pressure right now in China, because the Model 3 is very competitively priced, less than 300,000 RMB, and that's a very good price for the kind of value that you get for the Model 3. And we can expect that Model Y will ramp up quickly in China as well, and will be very competitively priced as well. So NIO's taking the sidelines here for now and didn't announce a price tag, in order to be more free later on to also react to the pricing of Tesla, which is quite interesting here. But to also give you some context here, my overall view on both companies is, and that's also why I'm invested in both companies, is that I think they can perfectly coexist. I will do another more in detail video about the business model of both companies, but I think they cannot be compared. They're different business models, and I think because the EV market is still in its infancy and still starting to grow, there will be so much more growth for both companies in the future. And that's also why I'm a long-term believer in NIO, if they can manage to survive, and also why I think both Tesla and NIO can coexist perfectly. They will not take market share from each other. They will take market share from the internal combustion engine cars and OEM sellers. So I think, and I made a video on YouTube also about my Tesla China sales estimations, in which I say that Model 3 sales will take over most of the German OEM sales within the next 2 years in China, based on what I'm seeing in the US model sales, and also based on what is my assumptions about the Chinese consumer. And I would expect the same for Model Y. I think it will be very successful. And based on that, I think also NIO has a very good growth potential here. The only thing about NIO is that the funding situation is really, really, really an issue currently. There's another comment here. If I am Elon Musk, I will buy out NIO. So we'll have a 50% share of China EV market. Well, I don't think Elon Musk will buy NIO. Even though now with the share price very high, Elon could actually sell some shares in order to make some acquisitions. But during the founding call, during the earning call, Elon already said like he's not going to make any acquisitions soon. He doesn't know where to invest and stuff like that. And I also don't think that NIO would be a proper target for for Tesla, because yeah, as I mentioned, I think they can perfectly coexist, and those brands are kind of separate, also kind of having a little bit of a different angle, different approach, different target group, if you ask me. I don't think Elon Musk or Tesla needs NIO in China in order to get a big market share. Ultimately, we could say that actually Tencent is the winner here. Like as we've seen today with the SEC filing that I discussed, with the bigger stake of Tencent in NIO, and also the stake that they have in Tesla with 5% market share, you can see that Tencent actually owns a good stake in both Tesla and NIO. So they are the big guys in the EV revolution in China, because not only are they invested in those companies, but also they're partly involved in the software. So they're the big winners here. So let's see, are there any more questions? Sorry guys, once again, on LinkedIn, I cannot see any of your questions. I can only see questions from the YouTube watchers here. Just taking a look at NIO share price is now down -2%. So that, in my point of view, might be mostly due to the sales numbers. I don't think Wall Street or most of the bigger share transactions that we see today are actually recognizing the second SEC filing, in which Tencent announced that they have a bigger stake in the company. I don't think most people are aware of what this could mean for the funding of NIO and also for the future of NIO. So this is all just breaking news, and my recent interpretation here of the things that are happening, and I thought I'm going to share it with you quickly on a live stream here, even though it's very spontaneous. Okay, another question here. Tencent 50.5% includes both subsidiary fund shares already? Question marks. Yeah, good question. This is the same question that I'm having here. For me, it doesn't get entirely clear from the SEC filing, because if you look at the filing, where do we have it again? The filing is here. In the filing, there's a report of 3 entities that need to report their stake in the company, and they report 5% for one entity for Mount Putois Investments. Another one is 10% for Image Frame Investment Hong Kong Limited, and then it's 15.5% of Tencent Holdings Limited. So if you would add them up in total, that would mean 30% of NIO share ownership by Tencent-owned companies, because all of these 3 companies are owned by Tencent. However, if you go into the details here of on this small print here, in the same SEC filings, it reads that all of those, that for the Tencent reported shares, for the sole voting power at least, they consist of the voting powers which are added of all of those companies in which Tencent is actually the owner. So it means that Tencent now, I think that's something we can confirm, has a voting power of 140 million. And this is coming from also the votes of those subsidiary companies here. And that brings close to the voting power of the NIO CEO, Li Bin. However, I'm not sure if this now means that Tencent Holdings is having a 15.5% stake, plus Tencent also owns those other companies and which have those respective stakes in the company, and in total they make up 30%, or that Tencent just owns also the 15.5% stake in the company, and this is kind of made up by those smaller subsidiary ownerships as well. that doesn't make sense to me. Actually, I would aim for this stake, which should be controlled by Tencent, but may have those kind of shares in total, might be much more than what Li Bin, the CEO, owns. However, because I think Li Bin, he owns shares which have more voting power, still the voting power of Tencent accumulated is less than what Li Bin has. So that's my current interpretation here, but this could be wrong. But in any case, it means that Tencent has now more shares than Li Bin, and it's getting close to the voting power to Li Bin. So I think that's the major takeout here. Yeah, there's another question. What is your take on the Tencent increasing stake from 13% to 15.5%? Prior to the Q4 earning call. Yeah, this is what this entire live stream is all about. So if you just happen to jump in now to the live stream, make sure to watch it again. I think it will be stored on both YouTube and LinkedIn where I'm live streaming. So I talk through this right from the beginning. So in my point of view, to sum it up once again, this is big news because we see that Tencent is increasing their stake. They're coming close to a voting power equally to the CEO of NIO here. And if, yeah, it's up to the interpretation of this SEQ filing, it could mean that Tencent even through their subsidies has a total stake in NIO of 30%. I'm not entirely sure if this is my correct interpretation here, so take it with a grain of salt. But this is what it could mean, even if that's not the case, even if it's just 15.5%, I think that's already big news. Do you think Tencent is undervalued? That's another question here. Well, I think I need to dig down deeper on Tencent. As I just shared this morning on LinkedIn in one of my posts, I'm invested in Tencent since 2012. So I made my first investment in this company pretty early. And as we can see with the share price increase over time, that has been a very nice run. I know that Tencent is actually going through a very difficult period of time as well because they are big in gaming and they have some issues with getting some of their games onto the market because there's some censorship and the approval process is very hard for Tencent currently. And I know that the company strategy is now to shift more towards a IoT company, a company which has some cloud services and connects more to hardware and stuff like that, and going more into the B2B markets in contrast to the B2C markets. I think we don't see the full potential of those kind of changes in Tencent right now. But one part which I really like about Tencent is that they invest in lots of companies in China, which 70 are publicly listed companies, 122 are unicorns actually, and they have very significant sales volumes or review volumes as well. So that's actually super interesting. So yeah, I'm long Tencent. I think it's a super interesting company. I cannot say right now if they are, undervalued. I would need to dig deeper on that. How often do you do conferences videos like this? Thanks for your question, Penny Lau. I'm actually doing this only when something, very interesting is happening, which is kind of unplanned. So usually you can watch and subscribe my YouTube or our YouTube. So Miriam and I, we're doing videos on Chinese tech companies that we find interesting. And those kind of live stream videos I only do from time to time. If there's some breaking news and something new that I want to get out to the public and also to my followers. And sometimes you can also look it up. I do live streaming like on the ground. For instance, I have been to the NQ Summit, which is a branding event by Audi in Beijing recently, where I did a quick live stream with Dr. Kai-Fu Lee, so one of the big experts on artificial intelligence in China, was holding a speech, and Peggy Liu, one of my contacts here on LinkedIn, was giving a speech on sustainable development in China and in mobility in general. And I was also live streaming before from the Gigafactory Shanghai, which I just did together with another guy on the ground, Chao. I don't know if you know him, if he's watching currently, but in the future, I'm obviously also going to do some live streaming, possibly from Gigafactory Berlin, because I'm currently placed here in Berlin. That's where I live and work. And so expect from time to time some updates on also live video. Okay, quickly going through the comments. I think I covered most of it already. Almost 1 hour of live streaming here. My voice is also getting quite bad. Let's have a look at the NIO share price again. It's still down 2%. Yeah, NIO still hasn't announced any news on the funding, but well, what I'm seeing here in summary once again is a positive news by Tencent. I personally am happy about this kind of move. I think it's actually some surprising news besides the not so good sales numbers on the NIO Q1 January 2020 numbers. So I think that's actually maybe the first step that we can see on the real funding news, because if Tencent is increasing their stake and having possibly a very big stake here in NIO, we don't know yet for sure, but definitely having a big voting power now, then I think this must be good for NIO as a company. And I'm today a little bit more confident than I was before on the funding issue of NIO, because as I outlined here once again with my quick calculations on the NIO revenues, I think for the Q1 we will not see nice numbers from NIO here. I actually think it will be quite bad. So I think on the stock price, in terms of what could happen in the next kind of weeks and months, I think we could easily see another drop of the share price, because I suspect that most of the news coming out very soon will still be negative, unfortunately, unless there will be real funding news, a positive announcement that hopefully a larger amount of funding has been acquired. Until then, well, I would say I will still mainly stay on the sidelines and not invest a big amount of my money. But anyways, this isn't any investment advice. This is just all I know as of today. And I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of update. So please make sure to hit the subscribe button, and also the little bell button, so that you get a notification whenever we post a new video. If you're watching on YouTube, on LinkedIn, obviously you can also follow us. We will post some videos, but also some normal posts from time to time, and we will keep you updated. Jordan, with the last question here, should I sell NIO? I lost 15% already. Yeah, sorry to hear about the loss in NIO. Actually, you can watch one of my videos, which is about my personal investment history in NIO, and I can tell you that I initially invested in NIO when they were about $4 or $5 a share, and they dropped during 2019 to less than $2 a share. So I was massively down on NIO, about minus 80%. So huge loss, much more than what you have had, or much more loss than you are currently having. And what I did is I actually I did buy more shares back at the time, because under $2, those kind of shares have been quite cheap. And back then, NIO also had more runway in terms of they still had a good amount of funding as cash in the company. So I was more confident that NIO could turn around, and I bought more shares, and thereby my cost average got down, and my holding in NIO was much bigger. And I happened to sell off a lot of my NIO shares when they crossed the $4 mark again, because then I could sell my shares with profits again, and still just holding a smaller stake in NIO now because I still want to see the final funding news confirmed. And yeah, I cannot advise you how you should tell how you should trade NIO, but that's my, you can maybe learn from my example how I did it. In general, I think you should know that if you're invested in NIO, it's a very risky investment. You can lose all of your amounts invested in NIO. So thereby, if you cannot afford to do that, you should be invested in NIO. That should be clear. So yeah, if you have just a small stake invested, I think it's not time to panic sell for now, because as we've seen, NIO is super volatile. It can also go up again. But my personal opinion only, and this is not investment advice, I think we will see the shares going more down in the near future unless we see some positive funding news. One more question. In the event that Q4 2019 earnings reach 500 million, what would be your reaction? Well, actually, yeah, I think the Q4 numbers, once they get reported, they will be actually, yeah, they might be still quite positive, because NIO is quite clever in the way how they do the earning calls and how they report, and they usually report very late. So by the end of the next quarter, they kind of already know what outlook to give for the last quarter, and that way it's kind of easy to manage the expectations. And as NIO already outlined, that Q4 will see good sales and so on. I think that yeah, we can also expect some good earnings here. But my bigger question, my bigger issue is what will happen in Q1 2020. And that will be, in my point of view, there's no way that we will see very good numbers here. Please watch my other videos on YouTube on those specific topics where I'll dig down deeper on this. Oh, there's even one question in German. Marcel, was denkst du zu Giga Berlin? Sieht aus, als ob es viel Verzögerung gibt. Oh wow, cool. Thanks for your question in German. So the guy on, I guess, YouTube is asking what I think about Giga Berlin. It seems like there will be some delay in Giga Berlin. Well, for now, I don't see any delays, to be honest. I was a little bit worried because there has been in the past some speculations that Tesla has signed the sales contract with the state of Berlin or Brandenburg yet. However, this turned out to be not true, and in the end, Tesla signed off the agreement and they bought the land to build a bigger factory. And as far as I know, they're now doing, clearing the land of World War II bombs. So a little bit of work to do on this kind of thing. And I hope they manage to cut down the trees by the end of February. So that's, I think, the plan. And I think they're actually starting right this week with doing that. And another personal news on that, I just bought a new drone this weekend, so I will be happening to go straight to the Gigafactory in Berlin, or at least the place where it will be built, and report from the field. I will show you some aerial footage of when the deconstruction work and the cutting down of the trees is actually starting to begin, and thereby we can actually see like how much delay we can expect or not. So I think, just as a general rule right now, if we see that they can clear the forest before the end of February, then I think the Gigafactory Berlin for now is on track. But as we know, and that's the big thing for me as well, I have been witnessing the Gigafactory Shanghai development. So I have been traveling 2 times to the Gigafactory in Shanghai, and I saw the progress, how fast and quickly the Gigafactory was built in 9 months there. really impressive speed. That's the China speed where everybody is talking about. And I'm not so sure about Giga Berlin actually, because you know about our airport here, which we try to build in Berlin, which the entire world is laughing about how this is not happening, and that's just in general a little bit slower than what's happening in China, due to a couple of different reasons. But so in general, yeah, I was actually a little bit skeptic at first about why Elon Musk and Tesla is going to Berlin, because I actually think there might be, quite a few people not happy about Tesla moving to Germany. There's a big position in Germany against Tesla, and also the bureaucracy in Germany is very, very slow. So kind of a few obstacles, but over time I'm getting more used to the thought, and I'm obviously very happy that I don't have to travel to Shanghai now to report for the Gigafactory, but I have Gigafactory being built just around the corner. And I think it's good news, because actually I think it's in some way what is needed for the German public in order to have more acceptance for electric mobility in general. And also, frankly, for the competition, because I think the German OEMs, they have now Tesla in their own backyard. They now need to compete for the employees, and the Model 3 sales will be more, will be better in Germany, because now you don't have to pay the import taxes anymore, and so on. So it's getting more and more competitive. And competition is always good for us as consumers, because we will see nicer EV cars in general, and it puts more pressure also on the German OEMs to transfer from combustion engine vehicles towards electric mobility. Yeah, German car companies won't like that. Right, that's the same comment which I'm also having. And some more comments in here. If you're watching, you should at least hit the like button. Thank you very much for this nice comment. Yeah, if you enjoy this kind of live stream, if you think this information that I delivered today about this new news regarding the SEC filings of NIO is valuable to you, please hit the like buttons down below, comment if you have any comments, and also please subscribe to our channel. That would be awesome, because we definitely have more to come soon. Penny Lau comments, if next time you have field trip to Shanghai for stock investigation, please let me know. I really want to learn from you. Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's cool. Yes, please reach out to me either on YouTube or LinkedIn and so on. You can also add my WeChat if you want later on. I'm happy to meet anybody from my followers here on YouTube or LinkedIn later on in Shanghai. We are usually traveling 6 times a year to China. It only happened that because of the coronavirus, some of our projects have been a little bit delayed, and obviously now I don't think it's the best time to travel to China, because I think the population in China now has different problems, and we should all be supportive. And I hope everybody can recover quickly, and I hope the Chinese economy will not have too much impact. I'm actually positive about it. I think the coronavirus will be handled well and will be over soon. And but for now, I don't think it's the best time to travel to China. And I will wait a little bit for our personal projects, and we'll do more projects here in Berlin or in Germany for now. Okay, that's it. Wrapping up for now. Let's take a last look at the NIO shares, which are now trading at minus 2.5% as of today. So yes, seems like the market did not appreciate sales numbers of January yet. Maybe the market doesn't see it. The Tencent ownership has increased, and the implications on what they could mean on the funding. So maybe only you guys who watch those live stream here have some more of the insights on what this could mean. So I hope you find this valuable. And yeah, please let me know in the comments if you are invested in NIO. If you have any further questions, I'm happy to do more videos about it in the future. Okay, and yeah, one last comment. I'm holding NIO shares and all Chinese stock market shares. Awesome. I'm also holding a couple of shares from Chinese companies, for instance, Tencent. I also bought a little bit of Luckin Coffee. Look at our YouTube channel. Miriam, my co-founder, she also did a video, more in-depth video about Luckin Coffee as well. I obviously also hold some NIO shares, and I actually have also some maybe very unknown companies of Chinese companies that I will talk a little bit more in the future about why I invested in those companies. Okay, that's it for now. Thank you guys for watching. Over and out. You guys are awesome. See you next time. Bye-bye.